That's today's topic here.
We'll- and we'll chat about it being neutral in the middle as
We'll
much as we
definitely
can.
try. They'll have to keep muting me, but
Yeah,
well, no,
I'm gonna mute you.
but that's part of the challenge. All right, everybody, stay quiet. Here we go. Hey, welcome everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Health Talks with Dr. Trinh. The one show, maybe the only show that helps you help yourself. With a man who's helped so many. Going to help us this morning figure it all out. Dr. Trinh, welcome, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
You know, I suggested this topic after after being glued like most Americans to the TV set all weekend. And I'm wondering if it's worth talking about, if I'm the only one that feels this way. How do you stay healthy? How do you stay sane in an otherwise crazy world? We have gone through three unprecedented things as of late that I told my wife, I said, I'm just stressed out. And it has nothing to do with what I'm doing in my life. It has to do with all external factors. First, there was COVID, which we're
Right.
still dealing with, which is unprecedented in our lifetime. Not since 1918 has there been a giant pandemic hit the United States like this. And then on top of that, we had record fires that I couldn't believe. I ended up getting a cold out of it because all the crap flowing in the air. And now
Yeah.
we're going through what could be an unprecedented constitutional crisis. Certainly a very stressful presidential election. I don't know if it goes that far as to become one for the history books, and I'm wondering, am I the only person out there who is having trouble staying sane in an otherwise crazy world?
Oh my word. Oh, have you shared screen yet? I still
Uh,
see health talks on there.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we get
How
everybody's screen up here
how
while
are
we're
you
doing that.
guys how are you guys handling the election stress right now? Without without necessarily saying who you're voting for.
Right.
How are you guys handling? Is everyone ready to be done and get the results and move forward, or is this like super stressful for you guys? Good morning, Maddie.
I have found it to be super stressful. And my wife's like, well, just turn it off. I'm like, I don't know. I have invested so much of myself into this election and into politics and into watching this 24/7 news cycle,
Right,
and I'm making myself sick. I really am. I'm stressing myself out. It's not health. My wife says there's nothing you can do about it. And I thought, she's right. There really is nothing I can do about this whole thing. I can
right,
rant and rave. I can tell my friends and family, I can go on Facebook endlessly and,
right.
and stream all this stuff. But at the end of the day, there's very little that I can do. There we go. Very little that I can do to change this. And as somebody else said to me the other day, you personally in your life tomorrow, whoever wins, and I know we're both invested on both sides. This is the election that's going. We're
Yeah,
facing an existential threat either way. People who
right.
vote for the president feel like this is our last chance to save the country, and people on the other side feel like I feel like this is the last chance to save the country. And so we're all got ourselves wound up. But at the end of the day, if either one of these men win, how is it going to
Right,
change my? Am I going to?
right. By the way, your screen looks weird on Facebook. It looks like your email or something's showing,
It does. Look at it now. Here, let's see. So,
rather than us. There's no videos of us
because I'm
looking.
showing it now, it should be.
Okay, weird. Huh.
All right. Well, I'll go
So
look on it and see if I can figure that out. But in the meantime,
yeah, so I agree with you. I read somewhere on Facebook, and it was a good point. I'm trying to remember who posted it. It's like, the day after the election, what's going to be different? Well, I'm going to go to work. That's
yeah,
not different. I'm going to go home and watch TV. That's not different. I'm going to go and hang out with whoever safely, right? And social distance. That's not different.
right.
Um, what's actually changed other than being on Facebook politic wars?
Right.
and defriending each other.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, in some sense, how much of this is going to change my day-to-day existence? I think it is. It feels like it is. It feels like the country is at some sort of tipping point and ready to. It reminds me a lot of the '60s. I'm old enough to remember the '60s as a kid, and for a sense, it felt like the country was coming apart. You know, we had riots in the street, we had assassinations, we had really serious stuff going on,
Right.
and it affected all of us. I'll give you a different example. Okay, look what happened after 9/11. You know, I forgot how many it was, but 2 or 3,000 people were killed. It was a shocking thing for all of us. But I remember how upset we all were, and probably still are. I can't watch that video of the plane going. I turn it off. It mentally affects me. I can't. It stresses me out to see that. I remember the day after the attack. I'm a good Irish Catholic, and I heard that our church is having an impromptu mass, and I thought, I'm going to go. And everybody was there. I owned a bar at the time, and I went down to the bar just to see. I thought, oh, we'll be deserted. Everybody's glued to CNN. Everybody's at home scared it's going to happen. No, it was the opposite. Everybody was there. It was packed.
So you drank whiskey at the bar before you attended mass?
Well, I'm Irish. That one goes with the other.
That's right. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So it's crazy, right? Because
And
when I think about it, you do your best to promote your guy, right? I mean, your guy is either Trump or Biden. You do your best to promote your guy, and
Right.
then you go vote.
Right.
But after you vote, it's like, now what? It's
Well, and we've put so much of ourselves into this. We've personalized it so much that if we lose, we're depressed. I'll give you a different example. You know, these are all kind of similar examples, but I remember years and years ago, I grew up in the Midwest, and oh my goodness, football was a religion. And if your team lost, I remember one time a team lost like a Super Bowl or something. One of my friends said, I feel like killing myself. And I'm like, you got to be kidding yourself. I mean, it is a football game. But he had invested so much into this and was so, and that when it did, it struck him in a personal way that was way out of balance to, whoa, this is a football game. Okay, calm down a little bit.
This is like that. This is like that.
Right.
Yeah, this is like that. And it's so sad that I think we have demonized whatever side we're on, right? Whether we're a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter, we've over the years have kind of learned to demonize the other side.
Oh, terribly.
So that we don't look at them the same anymore. I mean, right? It's either way. You learn we have these filters on,
right?
So that if your side, so that you accept whatever's on your side and the information that comes in that your side preaches, right?
What do they call that? Cognitive bias or something?
Or whatever, cognitive, and the other side bounces off your filter.
Yes. Right.
And so how do we recover from that?
How do we recover from that? And if we don't, what are the mental health issues that we face by overly getting ourselves wound up over things that ultimately we have very little control over?
Yeah, we do, because neither Biden or Trump will call you when you're sick.
No.
Neither of them will be paying your bills.
No.
Neither
one of them cares whether I live or die or even knows who I am. Yeah, right.
Neither of them will care if you live or die.
But we care.
They may care. Right, your family will care.
But look,
your friends will care. But how many enemies have we made in this process? Among even our own family and friends, and we've defriended each other on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And so what happens now that the election is done and you've defriended this friend that you've had forever?
I'll give you another way to look at it. I'm going to give you lots of different perspectives, and maybe we can provoke some conversation here today. But we used to do a show for the Association of California Cities, a rather conservative group of city mayors and public officials and stuff. And through that, there was a guy who hosted the show who I thought was a great guy, but I differed with greatly politically, Jerry Amonte, former mayor of Tustin. And he's a diehard, now he's a lobbyist. I mean, he's invested in this like most of us, way beyond what most of us are. It's his livelihood. He lives and breathes this stuff. and politics and political issues and winning and losing and all this. And one of the things stuck with me. He said, I think we've lost the fact that after it's over, you can be as ugly as you want. You can fight tooth and nail. You can call everybody names. You can do everything else you want. But when it's over, you got to work together, because everybody, it's not all or nothing. One side doesn't wipe out the other. We don't live in a country where they round them all up and put them in jail, or line them up and shoot them if you lose. And so you've got to work with these people, whether you think they're good. And he said we've lost that balance. So we put so much into it, so ugly, so personal, that afterwards it's very hard for these people just to drop the thing.
We have personalized it. We have personalized politics, guys.
Yeah.
It's like, are the only friends you have on Facebook the ones that after all this, right?
We're having trouble hearing you. Something happened to your sound there. You're doing something to your sound there.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Better, and but still soft.
All right. So it's like,
there you go.
I've seen so many people on Facebook, folks who know each other forever.
Right.
They have now, they go into these Facebook wars.
Yeah.
We've taken it personally, right?
We still got to fix your volume. There's something you did to it that made you're doing something that's making it sound bad.
Got it. I think I moved my laptop a little bit.
I think you did. Can you speak up a little bit? Can you?
Yes.
Or get closer to it?
Yeah. Hello.
All right, that sounds a little better.
better?
that sounds a little better, yeah. All right, so carry on. You were talking about personalizing this thing.
We've gotten to these Facebook wars, and people are defriending each other on Facebook, and it's like, now that the election is done, right? There's bitterness.
Oh.
And there's bitterness because you didn't vote the way I voted. Hello.
Right. All right. That sounds a little better. That sounds a little better. Yeah. Okay.
And
sorry.
so how do you recover from that, right? Friends that you've had forever, family that you've had, that you've had forever. Family don't go away, but because they voted differently than you did, right?
I've experienced that close up because I am from, again, I know you want to stay down the middle here, so I'll try not to make any judgment calls, but I'm from Trump. I grew up in Trump territory. I grew up in the upper Midwest, the industrial Midwest. Many of my relatives live in small towns. Many of them worked in car factories. They're the people that feel like the world has been screwed, something has been taken from them, and they're angry as hell. And they're either oddly enough, many of them were, if it's not Trump, they would vote for Bernie, because they both are looking for somebody to blame. And both of those politicians come in and say, it's not your fault that life has changed, that your factories are gone, that the world doesn't look like you anymore. It's somebody else. It's them. They've each got different demons. And so we've created these demons out there in a very unhealthy way that has created this. So I left the fold and came to California many years ago, and of course they think California is just off the map. I mean, this is just Nutsville out here, and they keep saying, "When are you going to come home? When are you going to come to your senses here?" And in many ways, I think I told one of them, I said, we all grew up in a different world. I grew up in a world where, and again, this isn't just the president, but this is a lot of politics today, where you didn't lie and cheat, you didn't brag, you didn't bully. These were not values. You were considerate, you were humble, and that's not just politics anymore. That's sports. That's everything. It's in your face. F you, right. Up yours. Ha ha. I crushed you. It's this all or nothing mentality that we've built up. And I don't know how we recover from that, because not only does it tear us apart, but I guess what today's show is how it's tearing me apart. It's not just us apart, it's tearing me apart. I've begun to realize this is a toxic thing, and it's social media feeds this thing dramatically. We sit there on Twitter, we sit there on Facebook, and we react so violently.
All day.
Yeah.
All day. How are you guys on Facebook doing, right? You guys watching us?
We're on Facebook. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How are you guys doing overall with this election fiasco, I would call it.
It is a fiasco. It really is going to stress us in ways that we haven't in a long, 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 long time.
Yes, yes. And this is one of the first year. Well, actually, I take it back. Bush versus Gore, we didn't declare a president for a while, right? Because it
Right.
went through the Supreme Court.
Right.
But most years, we knew we had a president by November 4th. Most years, most
In
elections.
our lifetime, but this is what people forget. Back in the day, the reason they inaugurate the president in January is because it took months to figure this out. In the Pony Express days, in the 1800s, in the early 1900s, before they had mass media, it took forever to tabulate this and to figure it all out and to certify it and everything here. This was not an easy, quick process. In today, again, I think it's a symbol of our times. I'm going to get a little philosophical here. We want 60-second answers to everything, immediate response. We want to know everything immediately, and it's fed by cable news and social media that has an insatiable appetite to be first, to be the first one to report something. We don't have time to sit back and just let it take its course. We have to immediately know. And that's part of the stress we put on ourselves, too. Why do we have to immediately know? The president's not going to be inaugurated till whatever it is, January 26th or 24th or something, by law.
I've been telling folks that, many of us have personalized the politics, have personalized the election. But really, in the end, guys, if you needed help, neither Trump or Biden will be calling you personally to help you out. It's going to be your family, your friends, your loved ones.
But we've invested.
No matter how they vote, no matter how they voted, right?
But we've invested ourselves, like we invest ourselves in a sports team. We've invested ourselves in a tribe, and the tribe becomes bigger. It's our identity. It's who we are. And if the tribe wins, we win. If the tribe loses, we take it personally, and we internalize it in very unhealthy ways. And I don't know how to stop this. I don't know how to turn off Twitter. I don't know how to walk away from cable TV. I don't know how to accept bitter losses. Sports and politics are kind of the same thing. I mean, I've had those feelings when your team loses, you're depressed. And it's like, that's crazy. My wife would say, it's just a game. That's not your team. You're not out there playing on the field. That's not you.
And the thing I noticed with social media is that because you're not seeing people face to face.
Yes.
You can be mean and ugly.
Boy, isn't that truth.
And tear them down easily.
Yeah.
It's very kind of sad. It's sad.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very hard for me to call you names face to face. Maybe we'll start a fist fight. Yeah.
If you are, if you're a Republican and I'm a Democrat, and we sat at, we sat at Starbucks having a discussion,
right?
We would be saying the same things that is being said on Facebook.
I agree.
To another person, right?
We
would be having an actual discussion about, the topics and we will, we would probably say, we agree to disagree.
Right.
But social media takes it another level where you can just trash somebody on social media because you don't know them as well, or because it's safe to trash somebody and just move on.
And in fact, it encourages you to do that because of the medium. There's no nuance. I say, what? And then you say, F you. And, it encourages short statements, and the sharper, the better. And the witty, endlessly try and figure out how to say something in a witty way or a stinging way or a whatever way. And then, but if we sat face to face with each other, we'd go, oh, gee, I'm sorry. That was a little over the top. I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah. We would never, if we were on opposite sides of the political spectrum and we were talking face to face, we would never say the same things that's being said in Facebook. And so social media can be damning.
Oh. Well, because it enforces tribalism. It enforces
Yeah.
It's anonymous, so it brings out the worst in us. I can say "f you" and "screw you." It's the. I'll give you another example, and this is one that I quote a lot. My late father was I guess that somewhat explains why I am not this, but my father was a rabid Republican. I was raised a liberal Republican, something that doesn't exist anymore. I'm a lost. I'm without a tribe.
Moderate Republican or
Moderate
something.
Republican, yeah, middle of the road. I was raised to be conservative on fiscal issues and very socially open. George Romney was a governor of Michigan when I grew up. He marched with Martin Luther King, Romney's father, Mitt Romney's father. He was there were a lot of progressive Republicans, Jacob Javits, Hugh Scott in Pennsylvania, Rockefeller, the Rockefeller wing of the party that got wiped out under the late 60s and then into the 70s. Anyway, so that middle ground, that none of the above, that's kind of where I grew up. My father was a radical, very conservative Republican, and I'm sure if he were alive, he would be voting for Trump, no question about it. And we'd get in these debates. One of them would be immigration.
Right.
And you have to understand that I only have one child. I adopted a daughter from Mexico many years ago, literally from a little village in Mexico. And
Wow.
in fact, she was brought across the border illegally and fell into foster care and was beat up and abused and everything. And that's where we met her in foster care. So people who
How old is she now?
she's almost 30 now.
Oh,
She's married and has a couple
right.
children, but we adopted her when she's about 10. And
Oh,
it was, we could talk about that someday. That's an amazing experience. People don't realize there's 500,000 kids in the foster care, and half of them are never going home to anybody. There's a real need out there. So if you want to make a
wow.
real difference, go down to and talk about fostering or adopting a child or working for Big Brothers or something. Anyway, and that would be a great topic because I could really go off on that one. But anyway, so this is his only grandchild is a illegal Mexican, and who became legal the day we adopted her. She became an American citizen the day we adopted her. And so he'd rail and go on and on and on, and I'd say, what is it that you hate about Mexicans? Well, they don't speak the language. And I said, like your own grandchild. Well, not her. I'm not talking about her. She's okay. But these other ones, then you'd start railing. And then I'd say, and the odd thing was my father was brought up by his immigrant grandmother, who came from Poland in the 1900s, lived in a Polish ghetto in Detroit, where the mass was in Polish, the paper
Right.
was in Polish. Is very similar to what you see in Little Saigon here. Everything is Vietnamese there. Everything in her neighborhood was Polish. She never
Right.
spoke English till the day she died in the 1970s. She was my great grandmother. I knew her a little bit, but it was hard to talk to her because she didn't speak English and I didn't speak Polish.
Right.
So we just would do little sign languages and kind of grunt and point at things here. And I said to my dad, so, what you hate about immigrants is they don't come here and learn the language. I said, like your grandmother never learned the language. Your own grandmother who you adored and raised you. And he'd say, well, it's different. No, it's not. It's,
Yes.
we,
Yes.
them are terrible. But when you start personalizing, well, not him, not her, but them,
Yeah.
them are
It,
terrible.
it's the problem is that life is simple when we put on filters
Yeah.
and we say good guy versus bad guy.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about gray. I don't
Ah,
have to think about the middle because I'm good, you're bad. You don't vote the same way I vote, so
right.
vice versa. You're a demon. It's so simple in our brain to put things in categories.
Yeah. Why is
Good
that?
category, bad category, good voters, bad voters, and life is so much more complex than that.
Yes.
Uh,
And the issues are more complex than that.
and the issues are very complex.
People are more complex than that.
Yes, 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 yes.
And so we tend to focus on the instant identification. You're a green team and I'm a red team. You're red, I'm blue. You're good, I'm bad. Up, down, yes, no. That's part of it. And then it's enhanced by this social media experience, which we've never seen before. We're anonymously writing, scrawling notes to each other with no context. I don't see your face. Is he kidding? Is he not kidding? Is he serious? Is that really? And then I get incensed and I write back to you. And that filter that would happen if we're face to face, where we would restrain ourselves, where we would contain ourselves because we don't want to get in a fist fight. And we were taught to respect others in a way. That all that goes out the window when you're just anonymously typing in the dark here. It's all of this and then some. I guess the point of today's story is: am I alone? Am I the only ones suffering from this? Are we all suffering from this? And if we are, this is Health Talks. How do we get healthy?
Right. I don't know of any family who don't have both Republicans and Democrats in their family, whether it's the immediate family or it's a cousin or an aunt or a grandma and a grandpa who don't vote the way we do.
But that is changing. I've read many reports now that let's talk about marriage. Okay, so we all have children, and you have aspirations for who your child is going to marry, and your child comes home, and this is going to sound horrible. I hope I don't go too far down a rabbit hole here, but I grew up in a black and white world in Detroit.
Yeah.
People who were of color lived on one side of the street, and we all lived on the other side of the street. And we never crossed that. It was 8 Mile Road, the famous 8 Mile Road that Eminem talked about in his movies and rap videos and stuff. This white kid caught on the border between black and white worlds here. And it was very crystal clear in the 60s. I mean, it was racially divided. You could not cross the line. We could talk endlessly about how it was in my lifetime. You couldn't move into my neighborhood if you were black. You couldn't. Oh, I mean, the great. So I'll give you a couple little quick anecdotal stories. I mean, this was just. So I grew up. I was born in 1956, so I grew up in the 60s for the most part. For the most part in the Midwest, around Detroit and other. I lived in Milwaukee. My dad was a car executive, so we moved around to different regions. I lived in Pittsburgh. I lived in Milwaukee. I lived in all these states. I lived in the 3 states that are in the center of this whole focus: Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Mostly in Michigan. That's where I went to high school. That's where I went to college. And in Milwaukee, when we lived in Milwaukee, this is 1963. We lived in an affluent white neighborhood that was 100% white. And the great Hank Aaron, the most famous baseball player of my generation, the home run king, who was black, who played for the Milwaukee Brewers, or Braves, that eventually they left and went to Atlanta and became the Atlanta Braves. Home run king. We all adored this guy. Mm-hmm. He tried to move into our neighborhood. Nobody would let him. And I remember asking my dad, why can't Hank Aaron live in our neighborhood? And he said, it's complicated. No, it wasn't. Black and white. I mean, it was that clear.
Wow.
So, we've come a long way, but wow. I remembered those days. I'll give you another story. So I remember, now we'll fast forward, it's 1974. I'm in high school, or just graduated high school. I'm in college, and I took a job in the inner city in a factory. I had never been past 8 Mile Road down, because the city of Detroit's like a wheel. So the further out, the further the number. You got 1 mile, 2 miles, 6 miles, 8 miles the border. We lived about 20 mile out, 18 Mile Road, way out. And so I'd never been down there. I was told, don't ever go down there because you will be raped, you will be robbed, you will be attacked. If your car breaks down in the city of Detroit and you're white, do not get out of the car under any circumstance, because there's like gangs. This is what we're told, praying, waiting they will immediately grab you. I mean, this is no joke. I mean, this is just the way we all felt. And right. So I'm now working in a factory. This is in the little bit better, but it's still the mid 70s. Right. And I was a security guard in the factory, because my dad wanted me to see what the world was like. And the factory was half black and half white. And they would never talk to each other. They would separate. They wouldn't sit down and have lunch together or anything here. It was black and white. You didn't talk, if you were with one, you didn't talk to. Sort of like prison today, supposedly. Everybody just stayed in their color here. And I didn't know. I'd never seen black people in my whole life. I lived in lily white suburbia. I was sheltered. I heard about this. I'd never been down in the ghetto. I'd never been down in the factories in the inner city. And all these white people kept coming up to me and saying, come on over here, son. They're all from the South. They're all what I thought of as hillbillies, I'm sorry to say. And they would say, "Come on over here, boy. You don't want to go talk to those people." And I was like, "You're as strange to me as they are. I don't feel part of either one of these groups here. I don't understand either of these groups." So I met this girl who was a security guard like I was, very attractive, very funny. She was an African American.
Right.
I didn't know. I asked her out. She looked at me like I was from Venus, and she said, "Are you nuts?" And I said, "Why? I like you." And she said, "Well, I like you." I said, "Well, let's go out. Let's have some fun." She said, "Where would we go?" I said, "Well, I'll come down and pick you up." She said, "You would get killed if you came into my neighborhood." And I said, "Well, okay, then come out to my neighborhood." She said, "I would get killed if I came to your neighborhood." And I went home and told my parents that, and their eyes got as big, and they're like, "You would go out with an African American?" And they didn't use that word; they used the N word. And I'm like, "Yeah, you told me to like everybody. You look at them as who they are. We're Catholic, we're Christian, we're kind, we're loving, we're caring. She's a great person." Oh, but no.
It's more complicated, huh?
Yeah. So that's the world I grew up in, and that's carried over into politics now. And the point I was going to make is where once you would be shocked if your child came home with somebody of a different color, and I'm not saying that still isn't somewhat the case. I think you'd be more shocked if your children came home with somebody of a different political persuasion. You're dating a Trump person? You're dating a Democrat?
Yes, it's a sad world.
It's that tribalism. I remember meeting a doctor years ago. I did some work for a PR. I'm sorry, I'm spinning all these stories here, but he was from India, and I'm I'm fascinated by foreign affairs. I was a political science major and a foreign policy major, and so I said, well, we would talk about India and Pakistan and that divide, how the two hate each other and everything here, and to me they look the same. I can't tell if somebody's Pakistani or Indian. Their names both sound foreign to me. They both have kind of a darker skin tone or whatever here. They both look the same. They can tell. And he said, and he laughed, he said, "I could bring home anybody." He was Indian. He said, "If I brought home a Muslim, a Pakistani, my parents would disown me."
Wow.
This is an affluent surgeon in Newport Beach who still couldn't escape that tribal fight from his home world. I can't. I still, in many ways, can't escape the tribalism I grew up in these three states that everybody's arguing about right now here. I was there.
So Alex on Facebook says we all bleed red.
Yeah, isn't that
Very
the truth?
true. Very true. I this past summer, I gave a Zoom course called The Science of Trust. The Science of Trust. I don't know if any of you guys were on that course, but but the point I wanted to make in that course is that we all have values, and although our values may be different, value 1, value 2, value 3, we all have intentions to fulfill, these values that we have. That value may be a value of mercy, or fairness, or compassion, or righteousness. Whatever these values is, we live to fulfill our values.
Right.
And in fulfilling these values, we have different pathways that we use to fulfill these values. Step A, step B, step C, step D. And our intentions is to fulfill these values. And when you sit down with somebody and you talk about certain values, most of us will agree what these values are and why they're important. Maybe the value of equality, right? Maybe we should all have an equal chance for education, right?
One of the foundations of American society, equality, right? Yeah.
Right, equality. And so the battle isn't necessarily the value, and the battle isn't necessarily the intention of equality. What the battle is how do you get there? So Republicans have a pathway of what they believe is required to get to fairness in education. Democrats have a pathway that platform of what they believe is required to get to, equality in education. But what has happened is this. What has happened is that because the steps that I believe to get to my value is different from the step that you believe is required to get to that same value, because those steps are different, we have somehow demonized the other person's intent
Yes. Well,
and intention.
that's what some of them were talking about
Right?
these days here. You can,
So we have somehow demonized.
right.
So if somebody else isn't voting the way you vote, you just assume that their intentions are evil.
Yeah.
And they have bad intentions, right? So if you're a Trumper, you're automatically racist. Or
Right.
if you are a liberal, you're automatically a socialist,
Right.
right?
Right.
These are the associations. So we have, and it's easy to categorize this because, again, the brain is easier done when you're like good versus evil, right? Socialism versus, racism. And so we have attributed the fact that somebody has different steps to get to the same goal.
Right.
We have attributed that to them having bad intentions or evil values.
And
That's what's happened.
I'll
Right?
go
That's
one
why,
step. I'll go one step beyond it, because again, I'm revealing a lot about myself here today. I was a political science major. I thought I was going to go into politics at one point in time. I did go to law school, all this stuff. So I've got this strange background that doesn't seem to fit. I was also into media, and I ran the campus radio station. So I had this I had this creative world and this kind of logical world here, or this passionate political interest world. And the country is founded on one principle and one principle. The country only works. The grease that makes this thing work, the ugly grease that makes us all get along, is an ugly word that's really been demonized in the last 10 years on both sides. Compromise.
what is that?
Yeah. The great Ronald Reagan used to say, what do you call somebody who only agrees with you 70% of the time? Friend. You don't call him an enemy, because 30% of the time he disagrees with you. And we
don't
have
do that anymore.
No.
No.
And of course,
now they're an enemy.
I'm an old Irishman here, and I remember the days of the old Irish politicians, of which Joe Biden reminds me a great deal of. The backslapping, the let's all get along, let's work in the middle. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, two great Irishmen as well, used to argue like hell during the day, and then what would they do? They'd go have a glass of whiskey, and they'd say, "Oh, you got me on that one. I'm going to get you tomorrow, though. By God, I'm not going to let you get away with this, you dirty rat." And they found a way to the Marquis of Queensberry rules. We can still beat the hell out of each other, but we're going to do it within a certain set of rules. We're not going to. There's no low punches. I'm not going to hit you below the belt, because I've got to work with you tomorrow. I'm not gonna make you, in Asian countries, I'm not gonna make you lose face so that you're humiliated so that you can never come back. I'm not gonna go that far, because I've got to work with you. That whole idea of compromise, and it goes to what you said. If you are wrong and stupid, I can still compromise with you, because maybe I'll convince you or convert you. But if you're evil, if you're Stalin or Hitler,
then there's no compromise.
No compromise. Then you've got to be stomped out. You're evil.
Right, and that's what's happened. I see it all over Facebook. Right, I have friends from the left and from the right, and the other side is evil. The other side is evil. No matter what side you're on, right? The other side
can't
is evil.
compromise with evil. Can't compromise with evil.
And
evil has to be eradicated. Yeah.
If you can't compromise with evil, then nothing gets done.
One of the things that keeps other society, you look around the world, the Middle East is a good example of countries where you have lots of groups that have hated each other forever. And the reason that they can't form stable democracies in many of these places is because they can't accept the fundamental principle of compromise. I can't compromise with those people. That Sunnis and Shiites, different tribes, different ethnicities, we've been fighting with each other. I'm Irish. The Catholics and the Protestants for 400 years. Since those dirty Protestants came in from England and took over parts of our country here, we still can't forget. You can't tell the difference, but we can. And, so it's that notion of that you can't compromise with these people. Can't.
Yeah, it's we need to heal. Our country needs to heal. Our families need to heal.
And so does it start within or does it start without? That's kind of where I was going today here. Does it start with us healing ourselves and saying, I'm only going to, in my own little world here, I'm going to start to look at things not in a black and white. I'm going to get off the Twitter feed and the Twitter rant, or whatever, the social media rant. I'm going to be a little more open-minded. I'm going to have discussions with people that I don't agree with and see if I can understand places we can agree. We don't agree on this, but we do agree on this. Does it start with us or does it start out there and then, somebody said... It
starts with us realizing that the person who sits on the opposite side, right? The person who sits on the opposite side of the voting, beliefs from us.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Meryl, who loves all the talk about Ireland. I'm very Irish here.
Meryl, are you Irish? Is Meryl Irish?
Stan doesn't sound like an Irish name. It sounds like one of those dirty English names, but okay. That's right.
Dirty English name.
Oh, the dirty rats.
Right. So it starts with us realizing that the person who don't vote the way we voted isn't necessarily an evil person.
Yeah.
Right. They have a belief maybe that to get to that goal takes different steps than we do. But they don't, and it also means their intention isn't necessarily evil because they voted.
I'm going to challenge you on one other thing here, and I'm going to give you insight for those of you who haven't been to Michigan. Has anybody on this Twitter feed ever been to the great state of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania? I lived in all three of those states, and I don't think anybody in California has ever been to any of those three states, any more than you've been to Alabama, Mississippi, or Georgia, probably in the deep south. Has anybody ever been to any of those places or lived in these places? Because if you haven't, I'll give you some insight into what is going on, at least on one part of it.
Yeah, anyone, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania.
I mean, so it's come down to these states again.
Battleground states.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we've all invested around the country in what's going on with that fight. And I don't think most of you understand how we all grew up and feel. You don't know any. You probably know many Midwesterners who fled like I did. A lot of immigrants, a lot of emigres. But that world back there, and I'll tell you, talk to my relatives. I have lots of relatives. All my relatives live in either Wisconsin, Minnesota, or Michigan, or Pennsylvania. A few in Pennsylvania. I know that very well. That's my tribe. That's where I grew up, and I left because I didn't like the tribe. And so you either buy the tribe and stay, or you leave. And I left. I'm the enemy. I'm in California now. I'm crazy. I'm liberal. Whatever.
So what insights do you have?
So here's the insight. They don't. You say we all have the same values. There is a deep feeling back there. That they have values, and those values are being threatened by the rest of us. Secularism is replacing Christianity. Socialism is replacing capitalism. All these fundamental things that they thought they grew up to think this is they feel their values, who they are, is under assault. The cancel culture. I can't say what I feel anymore here. I'm being told, Big Brother's telling me how to think and how to believe. And it isn't just a control, and it isn't just a loss. Yes, there's loss of jobs, and I think that magnifies all this stuff back there. It's been a slow slide to, a bad place back there, and shame on both parties for ignoring it for so long here until people are just fed up and say, somebody's got to pay for this. Somebody's got to fix this because this is just terrible. But they really don't think you share the same values or I share the same values as they do, simply because we live in California. They really feel their values are under assault. And that's why they're so willing to go so far. This is an existential threat. It's all or nothing. This is our last stand. If we lose, this is Custer's last stand. If we lose everything we cherish and believe in. And they'll say democracy and the Constitution, other things they'll throw in, but it really is values. They feel their values are being either dismissed or assaulted. A lot of it's Christian values, a lot of it's fundamental values, a lot of it is values of what they think is fair and right and wrong and good and bad and everything, and what's happening they think is not fair and it's not good, and the rest of the country is somehow complicit in this. And
I totally see that. I mean, I'm a Christian, and
right.
so I get stuff from Dr. James Dobson, focus on the family,
right.
the right versus the left.
Very much so.
And so I have friends who are on the left. I have friends who are on the right. And what happens is everything is categorized now, right? If good, bad, evil, right?
Yeah.
Red versus blue. My challenge to most folks is to sit down at Starbucks with somebody who votes completely different from you.
Well, yeah.
And have a conversation.
Right.
And what I've realized is when you actually have a conversation, a face-to-face conversation, I'm not talking about a Facebook argument where you
right.
defriend each other and call each other names, right? Have a conversation and realize intent and realize that they're not, first of all, necessarily evil, but realize that you may have the same values where you want religious liberty, right? Who doesn't want religious liberty?
Right.
And how does that person reach their conclusion to get there versus somebody on the left versus the right?
But if you think, but it's not about religious liberty. If you think religion itself is under assault, that religion is on the verge of being wiped out, we're going to be in a post-Christian world, then it becomes in an apocalyptic world. I'll give you another example. So we all believe in, nobody believes in torture. Nobody. You from Vietnam. They probably practiced torture in Vietnam, especially the communists against those that they did.
Yes.
Torture, you may have seen it or known people or whatever. I don't know anybody who's been tortured. But when 9/11 came along, maybe we should torture a couple of people. If it means they don't blow up that building and they give up bin Laden and we find him, if it's that big of a threat, I might change my values. I might say, okay, it's that serious. When World War II came along, nobody would have thought of blowing up a city of people. Nobody. That would be horrible. That's
horrible.
That's what Hitler did. He bombed cities and killed people. By the end of the war, my dad was a bomber pilot. We're bombing cities. We blew up, an atomic bomb to end the war. Make it so horrible they'll quit fighting. That in some way went against all of our values, but it was so desperate and so important that the values go out the window. This is more important. This is survival. Yes, right.
It's a hierarchy of value. I mean, you may have compassion on your list of values and you may have fairness on your list of value, but one is going to be higher than the other, right? Whether compassion exceeds fairness or fairness exceeds compassion. So it doesn't mean that you don't have both values, but you're going to fulfill your number one value.
Right.
And your number two value is going to sit on the side. Right?
And people, it's survival. People really feel they are fighting for the survival of their race, I'm sorry to say, their tribe, their way of life. You hear that a lot. It's the same way. I'll give you another analogy as a history major. It's what we went through in the Civil War. For a couple hundred years, we developed this slave society in the South that in many ways, you go see the plantations, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. It was all built on the back of slaves, though. Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, Washington owned slaves. That this notion that, well, that's okay because we're helping them out and they're beneath us and we're Christianizing them and they're really a subhuman race anyway, so it's kind of okay. We're being kind to them like you would to your pet. But I know this is harsh what I'm saying, but we built this kind of notion, and these are good, honest, Christian, God-fearing people that did this and rationalized it. And they used to say, our peculiar institution, our way of life. And when they felt finally their way of life was being threatened, they rebelled. They revolted. Now they lost, and had to we had to bring them back into the fold somehow here. But we fought the most bitter civil war any country has ever fought in the history of mankind. Nobody killed each other more than we did. When we fought a civil war, we did it better than anybody. Millions of people were killed. Went on for years. And I was a big Civil War buff. I've been to all these places all over the country. And
I do the Civil War reenactments all the time. Yay.
Yay.
Like the best things.
Oh, so we and it came down to, again, that you felt your whole way of life was on the line. At that point, you will do or say anything. Then it's survival, and you will fight ugly. You will lie, cheat, steal. You do anything you can because it's all or nothing. It's win or lose. And it's no time to be nice.
I totally see that.
I got to give a shout out to a couple of people here. Dan Daly, good Irishman that he is, lived in Troy. That was right next to where I lived. I lived in Bloomfield Hills and Troy, but he went to MSU, Michigan State. I'm sorry. No, I went to U of M. But anyway, but again, see this tribalism, U of M,
Yes. Alex says it's hard to have a conversation when the media the person chooses to watch is completely different.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's
because they see the world differently. You can see the same thing. I love to do this. Something will happen, and you turn on Fox, and one take on it, and then you turn on MSNBC or CNN, totally different take on it, and you think
completely opposite takes on it.
Completely opposite. Good, bad, this, that. And so we're living in, and social media feeds us. We've got bubbles. We're living in separate realities. We see the world separately, and we interpret it separately, and we both think that the other is a threat to our very existence.
Yes, 100%. And guys, so the election is done. We've all voted.
Is it? Is it done? Oh, do you know something I don't know?
Done. It's not declared, but we've all voted, right? We've all voted.
Right.
So what's going to happen now to your relationship with the person who did not vote the same way you did, in your own family, among your friends, among your colleagues? What's going to happen? And my challenge to you is this. And I'm just a more pragmaticus. Or
you're pragmatic, right?
Yeah, pragmatic.
Pragmatist. You're a pragmatist.
Pragmatist, right? So my point is this. You're going to live with your family. You're going to interact with your colleagues and your friends, right? And no matter how they vote, they're the folks who are going to be the ones you're going to call on when you need to chat with somebody, when you need help, and if you're sick, right? They're the folks you're going to be calling on. It's not going to be Trump who's going to rescue you, and it's not going to be Biden. It's not going to be your congressman.
What?
Right? And so
I gave everything. I gave them money. I gave them my life's blood. I've lived and died with their success. They are my champion.
I know. And think about that for a second, right? Think about that for a second, because Trump's not going to be paying your cable bill, and nor is Biden.
Trump sent me a check, though, signed his name on it here. I got a $1,200 check that said Donald Trump on it here. Anyway. You're right. We're living in a world where we've got to realize that we've invested so much in this that we've turned it into something that's not. It's not us. Okay, I think we lost Dr. Trinh. I think he.
You need to.
Oh, you're
not going to be like the.
Yes. Okay.
Right?
Well,
I think Facebook is trying to ban me here from saying this.
I think that was what you froze. Something you were trying to be kind and noble, and immediately social media said, "Don't let him do that. That we don't make any money on that."
Facebook thing, right? I know Facebook's trying to freeze me here, but it's like, guys, in the end, it's your friends it's your family, and it's your colleague. It is not necessarily your president who's going to bail you out. That's my point.
And we used to be able to, at the end of the day, put it aside and still be friends and family. The great Ronald Reagan and the great Tip O'Neill, the great Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the great Justice Scalia, icons for both of their movements. And yet, at the end of the day, they both loved opera, and they were apparently deep personal friends, even though they were deep rivals when it came to opposites, when it came to politics and philosophy and judicial philosophy.
100%, guys. 100%.
Okay, well, turn it off for a while. Don't turn us off, but turn off the ugly part of it here. Thanks for tuning in, and come back next week. Give us your topics. Tell us your techniques of how you reach out and talk to somebody this week that you wouldn't normally reach out to. Open your mind a little bit here, and let's reach across the aisle a little bit more here to each other here. Thanks.
Across the aisle.
Okay.
Yes. Take care, guys.
Current stats indicate that sales reps only contact new leads about 50% of the time and make less than 2 attempts to contact them. And they're only about 35% productive. CRM is the wrong tool to engage sales prospects. VanillaSoft is an engagement platform. It allows you to rapidly turn marketing qualified leads into sales qualified leads. According to user reviews, VanillaSoft will increase your pipeline and productivity by 3 times or more by ensuring each new sales lead is engaged within seconds persistently and with the cadence that's optimal for your prospects. Don't let your sales leads fall into a black hole. Take your lead engagement and sales qualification out of your CRM. Try VanillaSoft for free at vanillasoft.com.
Welcome back to another episode of Inside Sales. Brought to you by our sponsor, VanillaSoft.